Hello and welcome to Unspun Live, the Herald's politics podcast. Throughout the election campaign, we're going to be speaking to every single party leader. We have the first of our leader interviews today with Alex Cole-Hamilton. I started off by asking him about the campaign trail. Do you enjoy campaigning? Is this a fun part of the job for you?
I absolutely love it. I think that there's a state, that rare times in your life of a feeling of being exactly where you're meant to be.
Okay.
And that's how I feel. And also, it's very difficult because we've been campaigning for the last 18 months and juggling that with the very serious work of being solid constituency MSPs and all the legislation we've had to contend with in Parliament. So laying that aside for the duration actually gets you into a wonderful state of flow and just doing exactly what you need to do.
I mean, and do your team, do they let you go? Do you go up to every door, or are your appearances on the campaign trail managed to okay, this is a maybe or this is a definite?
Oh my goodness!
They would never send you to a reform voter, would they?
No. I knock more doors than any other party leader. I hands down guarantee that, and I do it every day, even when there's no cameras there. It's almost my happy place. I literally get a chemical response from door knocking. I'm not saying I'm an addict, but I'm not far off.
Okay.
And I love it because you're meeting, it restores your faith in humanity. I mean, 99.9% of people are absolutely lovely.
Sure.
They just want you off their doorstep as fast as possible. And actually that's fine because you don't want to hang about. Yeah. And you meet some really lovely people. I met, for example, I once had this older gentleman bring me into his living room where he was polishing 3 sets of bagpipes. And he offered to teach me my first ever bagpipe lesson, to get a sound out of it on the very pipes he'd used to bring the troops ashore at Sword Beach in Normandy.
My goodness.
So I rang my team and said, I'm done for the night. This is where I am. Yeah. I've got to be with this guy. And he was lovely. And I just, there's very few professions where you get that little glimpse into people's worlds. And it was just a humbling and an amazing experience. Yeah. And you don't get that every day. Of course you don't. But people are generally kind and nice, and they're interested that you're interested, and they tell you what's going on, and that's fed right through into our agenda. And why we're unashamedly fronting the crisis in our health service, which is actually a crisis in social care. We can maybe come on to that. Why they're concerned about Scottish education. It used to be world leading and now it's not. We want to take mobile phones out of classrooms and put pupil support assistance in. It's those doorstep conversations that have told me that people are concerned that they just can't get about, that the roads are a disgrace, that the ferries are a disgrace. That's why I asked for Parliament to be recalled. And they're really concerned about making ends meet, particularly when the price cap changes in July and those fuel bills start to skyrocket. We want to insulate cold Scottish homes and drive down energy bills with Scottish renewable power.
That's really interesting. So a lot of your policy platform genuinely comes from these conversations.
100%, absolutely.
It's a thing that all the parties do. All the parties do. And you see them on Twitter going, a great reception on the doorsteps. Yeah. Is it always a great reception on the doorsteps?
Well, I said 99.9. There is 0.01% of the public who will give you a door in the face, and that's fine. They've not asked for you to come, and it's not for everybody, and they may be implacably opposed to what I stand for. Mm-hmm. That's a democracy. Yeah. You dust yourself off and you go into the next door. But like I say, I love it, and I wouldn't love it if it wasn't so connecting. Indeed. And I just go back to that. Kemi Badenoch once said about the Liberal Democrats, you think of a Lib Dem and it's someone who'll turn up and fix your church roof. Guilty. That's us. We're communitarians. We love knocking doors. We love going street to street. We love finding out what's broken and fixing it. And with, across the 10 target constituencies we've got in this election, or indeed anywhere in Scotland, because on that regional peach-coloured ballot paper, you've got a huge opportunity to elect a Lib Dem. You'll have someone who will turn up at your doorstep and fight for you all year round.
Well, let's talk about care and health and social care. As you said, that's coming up on the doorstep. What are you hearing, and what are people saying to you, the problems?
So more and more people, 800,000 Scots now are waiting for some kind of medical intervention. And a lot of those surgical interventions in particular are being held up because of a care bottleneck in our hospitals. And what do I mean by that? Well, on any given night in Scotland, 2,000 Scots are well enough to go home, but too frail to do so without a care package to take them to their own home or a care bed in a local care home. That means that there aren't enough beds in the main hospital for elective surgical operations or to receive people coming in from A&E. That's why you hear about the delays in accident and emergency and ambulances stacking up outside for hours on end. It's not a deficiency of care in our hospitals, it's just capacity. There's nowhere for these guys to go. That's why we're hearing about, you talk about corridor care. corridors are not a place of treatment. It's just another waiting room.
Yeah.
But we're hearing all too many Scots spending as days sometimes on stretchers in those corridors. The answer to this is social care. If we can if we can deliver transformational change in social care by making it a profession of choice, increasing salaries of care workers and creating those packages, it costs half as much to get someone into a care home and quarter as much to get them into their own home. It's costing the NHS £1.3 million a day to keep those 2,000 Scots in hospital who do not want to be there. That's fundamentally where you unlock this whole crisis.
You make it sound really simple, and it's a problem
Thank
that we've
you.
known about for a long time, but it's one that we've had this for many, many years. So why haven't we done it so far? Why has it not been fixed?
Well, government disinterest. I mean, I've been screaming about this for 10 years. I've been in MSP, but the Scottish National Party dallied with social care in the last manifesto. But what was their solution? A vast and unnecessary bureaucracy that wouldn't have done anything to make social care a profession of choice, but instead would have asset stripped decision-making abilities from local social care partnerships and put them to faceless bureaucrats in the centre. That's nonsense. I mean, you could have paid thousands upon thousands of care workers a salary for what they spent on something they eventually binned, and they binned it because COSLA and social work did not like the idea of a national care service. So I think the SNP understand that social care is the problem. They're just casting around for a way to try and fix it without actually making social care a profession of choice. They're getting it the wrong way around.
You also talked about the ferries and the ferry fiasco we're seeing right at the moment, just now, when we have I think at the time of recording this, there are 8 vessels off. I think one has just the
Re-ended service.
Come back. You want to see Parliament recalled?
I am, and we can be recalled. We can be recalled right up until the 8th or 9th of April. I think 9th of April is the official day of dissolution. So we're effectively in recess rather than dissolved. And I think on something as serious like this, a crisis which is engulfing every island community and the coastal communities that serve them or on the opposite side of the body of water they're on, then it is a national problem, a national crisis, in fact, particularly as we're coming into what should be an incredibly lucrative fortnight of the Easter period for people who want to go on holiday to Scotland's beautiful islands, who can't. For those islanders who are stuck at home needing some kind of medical intervention on the mainland, who cannot, and businesses who depend on tourists and supplies to come via those ferries. So all in all, we need to get back into the chamber of the Scottish Parliament as parliamentarians. We need to sort this mess out, and in particular, authorise the Scottish Government to greenlight an immediate recovery package for those communities. I'm talking money in pockets now, not waiting till a new government is formed.
I think you'd written to the leaders of the other parties and to the PO about this. Have you had any response?
I've been in back-to-back interviews, so I've not checked my email. But I would hope that they wouldn't stand in the way. I mean, we're not talking about days and days off the campaign trail. We're talking about an afternoon's work in the Scottish Parliament, doing what our electors sent us to Parliament to do and fixing a national crisis. I think that people in island and coastal communities would take a very dim view of politicians who said, no, thanks, I've got a photo op. I'm not going to bother coming into Parliament to fix this mess.
But is this not a bit of a photo op for you too?
No.
Does it seem to be doing something or calling for something without that no one's going to agree to?
That's rather cynical of you, isn't it? I mean, no, not at all. No, look, ultimately, I'm in politics to get things done. Every Lib Dem elected is there to get things done and to fix things that are broken. Fundamentally, we've shown the national crisis in our ferries engulfing those communities, a crisis of the SNP's creation. Let's not forget that. Their botched handling of ferry procurement has got us to this place. It's a political problem that's been created. It requires a political solution. You can't come up with a political solution from the campaign trail. You need to get back to the benches of the Scottish Parliament to thrash this out, to find some consensus and get these communities some relief.
Can we talk about some of the other sort of pledges and promises you've made in the campaign trail so far? I think there was a youth work bill. What is that? What does that involve?
So I was a youth worker for 19 years, and I have seen the transformational difference that detached and sessional youth work can make to young lives. And fundamentally, we know there are far too many young Scots who are still adrift of employment, education or training, or are still dealing with unresolved childhood trauma. Youth work is the silver bullet in all of this. It reaches the parts that others cannot. If you can forge a relationship with a youth worker, it's very different to the other adult relationships in your life, whether that's parents or teachers, which can, let's face it, can be quite dysfunctional sometimes. But youth workers can help leverage that self-confidence and that recognition of the innate abilities of young people and help them find a new path. We believe, and we think we need to legislate for this, that every young Scot has a right to youth work. They should have an entitlement to youth work, which is allows them to forge those new skills.
Let's talk about the installation program as well, the emergency installation program.
Yeah. So again, this is another example of Scottish National Party disinterest.
Sure.
It's been clear now that we've had obligations to net zero. One of the ways you do that, one of the ways we sort of get ourselves off our addiction to oil and gas is by driving down demand. The SNP, in fact, both governments have singularly failed to do that. And the easiest way you reduce our need for burning fossil fuels or importing oil and gas is by reducing the requirement to heat homes, and you do that with insulation. There are still hundreds of thousands of homes in Scotland not adequately insulated, hundreds of thousands of Scots in fuel poverty in 2026. That's an outrage. This is a Dickensian reality in our modern Scotland. So as a priority for us, we want to begin a programme of insulating cold Scottish homes, or rather accelerate existing programmes, and make sure that those houses and communities shivering in the shadow of pylons and transmission wires and turbines, who are seeing on their doorstep renewable power being generated but not feeling the benefit, that they actually get a taste of those profits, that they get money to help drive down fuel bills, but also for their communities in terms of community benefit.
Let's talk a little bit about the 10 seats that you're hoping to gain.
I was hoping we'd talk about that.
not gain all of them, but there's...
no, because we hope for it.
Yeah,
of course.
So it's quite ambitious. I mean, more than double your numbers, really, isn't it?
But it's a real prospect, I can tell you. You know, I've been, every night I go and review our canvas data. We've spoken to 20,000 people in March across Scotland in those 10 target constituencies. And my goodness, we have the beating of the SNP in all 10 of them. Right. And to just, for the benefit of your listeners, I'll rattle through them if we go on a countrywide fly through. Yep. So that starts in the Northern Isles, Orkney, Shetland, which we hold already. Then Caithness, then Inverness and Nen, then Skyloch, Arbor, Badenoch. Argyll and Bute, believe it or not, is absolutely in play. It's going to be very close between Lib Dems and SNP. Then we've got Strathkelvin and Bearsden. Of course, that's commensurate with Mid Dunbartonshire, which we won with a 10,000 majority just 2 years ago. Then in North East Fife, held by Willie Rennie, Edinburgh North Western is my seat, and the new seat of Edinburgh Northern in the capital as well. All of them are going, firing on all cylinders. We love what we're seeing in terms of our election returns. It's clear we're getting lots of tactical support from people who wouldn't normally vote Lib Dem, Tories, Labour, backing us to stop the SNP. But the exciting thing for us in this election, you'll get sick of me talking about this, is that wherever you are in Scotland, for the first time in a long time, you've actually got an opportunity to elect a Lib Dem through your second peach-coloured regional ballot paper. So if you're not in one of those constituencies I've named, I want you to vote Lib Dem on both. But the most important ballot we need from you is your second peach-coloured regional ballot paper.
So you said 20,000 contacts now. For some context, is that a lot? Is that,
yes. So
how does that compare to previous elections?
January. So if you consider the last big national election we had is 2024. Yeah. In a month in the lead up, in January in 2024, we got 4,000 contacts. In Scotland. So to get to 20,000 contacts, that's phenomenal. Yeah. I'm really excited. That's nearly 5 times that. And so we're in a really good place. We're not taking anything for granted. And we're going with such hope in our hearts. And I think that people, it's never been... And one of the reasons we've got so much data and we've reached so many people is our activists are really enjoying it. And they're enjoying it because of the warmth they're getting on the doorstep. I just think, I think that if you're in some of the other parties, you're probably getting doors in the face right now, not for the Lib Dems, and we're back.
Tactical voting, you touched on tactical voting there. Again, I was at a briefing by the Scottish Election Study just a couple of weeks back where they talked about there being much more tactical voting at this election than there had been previously. You're saying you're gaining from other parties. Are you losing some to some of those other parties where people might be trying to sort of stop reform from getting in?
Well, I mean, I hope that people vote Liberal Democrat everywhere. And I'm sure that, as I've just said, voting for the Lib Dems, particularly on that second peach-coloured ballot, it will absolutely count. Every single vote will count, and we'll elect a Lib Dem MSP. But look, I'm focused on the 10 core seats that we're trying to win. I think we're absolutely smashing it out of the park. And remember, if the SNP are at or around 35% on the constituency vote, they are beatable absolutely everywhere. And people are wise to that. And that's why we're seeing so many people come to us.
But would you encourage Lib Dem voters who would rather not have a Reform MSP to tactically vote?
No, I would encourage Liberal Democrat voters to vote Liberal Democrat. But the most important vote that they can cast for us is on that second peach-coloured ballot paper outside of those 10 target seats.
Because the polls suggest it's going to be a really different parliament when I go back on May the 9th or 10th or 11th, when the first day of the new parliament is. First of all, we're going to have 42 people who aren't going to be there because they've left. So there's going to be that huge change. But it looks like we're going to have a fairly sizable chunk of Reform MSPs there. We don't know what sort of shape the SNP are going to come back in, but it looks polls suggest they're going to be the largest party, though maybe short of a majority. And so there's going to have to be some sort of deal making here.
Well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, just on the 42 outgoing MSPs, and I paid tribute to all of them. I mean, it's a big thing to put a lot of self-sacrifice in terms of representing your communities, and I thank them for their service. In terms of the SNP majority that you described, I think it's clear that those 10 target constituencies could deprive the SNP of that majority. And in fact, the National just said that Edinburgh Northern, which is one of the seats I pointed to, is exactly one of those battleground seats which could either unlock an SNP majority or lock it up forever. Well, not forever, for the next 5 years. And people listening to this or reading about it will know that if they're living there, and encourage them to vote for that. As for reform, look, the more that Malcolm Lord offered and his policies come on to display, the more they unravel. I trust the people of Scotland. They are wise. They understand when they're being sold a pup. I think they're starting to see that from Lord Offord, and we're already seeing that support begin to plateau and dissipate.
Oh, are you really? On
the I think so. In our constituencies, we just don't find reform because people are. I understand why they're looking at reform, because a lot of people are just desperate for a change. They're tired. They're frustrated by other parties, and they're right to be. And we think Scotland deserves better than that. They're casting around for change, but the kind of change, and obviously because of the air coverage, the media coverage that reform are getting, they're looking at the reform as some bright new shiny thing. But as they start to understand the miserly, mean-spirited worldview of Farage and Lord Offord, which punches down on vulnerable people, which doesn't embrace diversity or multiculturalism, which makes Scotland the great country that it is, the more they turn away from it. And we're here, and people can see that we have a realistic vision and a realistic plan for change, but it's change with fairness at its heart. And I think that people will warm to that.
So when we get to the new parliament, all the new MSPs are elected. I think it's in the second week of that new parliament, you have to pick a first minister. And we've seen some sort of talk about that this week already, about where people are going to go, because Labour believe that they could still conceivably have Anna Sauer as first minister. They think they can turn enough constituencies in Glasgow, that there's a tactical way for Anna Sauer to maybe become from the third largest party, but to be first minister if all the other parties vote for him. I mean, if it comes to that, who would you vote for, Anna Sauer or John Swinney?
Well, I've been very clear that there is no circumstance. I would resign as leader before voting to put John Swinney back in the House, because we need change. And the SNP are the problem. They're not the solution. So ultimately, there's no pacts or alliances with Labour. I'm focused on delivering as many Lib Dem MSPs as possible so we can deliver that, fast access to local healthcare, your GP or an NHS dentist near you, improving Scottish educational attainment by taking those mobile phones out of classrooms and putting pupil support assistants in, getting Scotland moving again, driving down energy bills. Those are the core things that we're focused on for the next 5 weeks. And ultimately, it'll be up to the electors what the electoral math looks like.
See, I once spoke to John Swinney on this podcast just the end of last year. In fact, it was just the end of last year. And he was talking about the highlights of his year. And one of the highlights of his year was getting you to back his budget, because he said you started off the year by saying that the votes of your party were on offer if anyone wanted to have a vote of no confidence in him. But then he managed to convince you to back his budget. I mean, he couldn't convince you to back him to BFM. That's a strict red line.
Well, he sounds like he's easily pleased if that was the highlight of his year, doesn't he? And look, I mean, no, there's no secret. The last 2 years, Liberal Democrats have backed the Scottish Government budget. And we've got some amazing commitments like that. £300 million this year alone. Whether that's £178 million business rate relief or £70 million for colleges, fast access to diagnosis for neurodiversity, particularly ADHD, with lots of families and young people are struggling with. We don't see the budget as a referendum on the performance of the SNP government, which by any metric has failed the people of Scotland. We see it as a means of unpicking the damage. And I think in a parliament of minorities, which we are by and large always a parliament of minorities, save one session with the SNP majority, I think it's the people who send us to parliament would take a dim view if we didn't put aside our differences and strive to find consensus where we can and liberal changes where we can make them.
When we're talking about the 42 MSPs who stood down, you talked about some of the self-sacrifice they make. I mean, this must be a pretty tough time for your family just now. You're having to be out every single day, sort of. I mean, obviously you're getting to go down the Clyde in a speedboat and things like that and again.
Do you know what? They're so wonderfully understanding.
Really? Okay.
Darcy, my 12-year-old, actually comes out delivering leaflets with me. She's the only one of my kids who's a paid up member of the party, and she joined the party herself. She said to me once, "Dad, how does Davey know who I am, and why does he keep emailing me?" Well, he's emailing everyone, love. But no, we make time. I mean, we went, for example, Sunday. I try and take off. This Sunday we had a lovely day. Went to see Project Hail Mary with the kids, and just had a nice time at the cinema. So yeah, I can't wait to spend some time with them. We're hoping to go away in the summer together. So it's all about, they understand the rhythms of this job. Sure. And actually, now that the business at Parliament is over, unless we get recalled, hopefully, they understand that I'm not going to be voting in Parliament till 10 o'clock every night that I was last week. And I'm actually at home quite a lot because I do the visits in the morning, come home for lunch, then go out delivering some leaflets, come home and feed the kids, go door knocking. It's quite an easy rhythm once you're into the campaign itself.
I mean, obviously you live in Edinburgh, so you're an Edinburgh MSP. You don't have far to go from Parliament to home.
17 minutes.
Yeah. But some of your colleagues, I mean, this is because obviously you talked to one of the seats you're targeting is Kate Forbes' seat. Yeah. And one of the reasons that she stood down was just because of the travelling and the size of the constituency. So the person you're hoping to do that job is going to have to make a really big self-sacrifice if they get elected.
And I still don't think we're getting it right. It's a family-friendly Parliament. And I think it's a great shame that Kate's taken that decision. I mean, we were planning to beat her, but nevertheless, I have a lot of time personally for Kate. I mean, we have a lot of political and ideological differences, but I can see the spirit with which she approached the job. So yeah, I think fundamentally the things like hybrid working. I mean, I don't know, this election gimmick that Reform was saying they're going to insist that all their guys turn up in person. They're going to find that quite hard. Considering the pressures of being a good constituency MSP. And sometimes I'd rather have a surgery and vote from home. And I know my compatriots who are far-flung would rather do the same because that option is there. And if you're not leading in the chamber, you don't need to be in the chamber. But we take our job very seriously. And that's why, I'm really excited for the extended group we're bringing back to Parliament. They're going to attack that with gusto. My goodness, we know the metrics speak for themselves that Lib Dem MSPs work harder than almost anybody else. And we turn up, we knock doors all year round, day by day, street by street.
But are you worried, I suppose, that anyone who gets this job, who does this job, will have to make that self-sacrifice? I mean, does that put people off politics, do you think? So
I've done a lot of work with our candidates, particularly in the 10 target seats and in all of the people who are on that regional ballot, where we hope to do well on the Peach vote. I think that, before, we selected them maybe 18 months ago. And in advance of that, I was doing a lot of work with people who were interested to kind of give them an early induction as to what the work rate is like and what the rhythms of it are like. And my goodness, I'm so proud and so pleased of all our target candidates in terms of the work rate they're putting in, the 20,000 contacts. And remember, to get 20,000 contacts, you need to knock 50,000 doors. So that's a big, big shift they're putting in. But like me, they're starting to get a chemical response from it. And, when you meet somebody who was SNP and they're now voting Lib Dem, which we see every night, or any other party coming over to us, or just instinctive Lib Dems, it's a lovely feeling.
What's got the rest of the campaign got in line for you then? What are you looking forward to? I mean, we talked about you speedboating down the Clyde. Are you getting to hang glide or sort of bungee jump?
So we're going to keep some of that and stuff under wraps, but there's going to be a lot of colour. Listen, I'm going to try and be my own person in this campaign. Yeah, Ed Davey's famous for his it's a knockout kind of stuff. And whilst there's an element of that, I think we're going to see a little bit more serious politics. Okay, but we're not going to be bereft of colour. We're going to have a lot of fun. Sure. But it's always going to be attached to a serious message about the cost of living, about education, about local healthcare, and about driving down people's fuel bills.
Great, that's great. Thanks, Alex. Much appreciated.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Excellent.
Thanks so much. Alex Cole-Hamilton speaking to me for Unspun Live. That's it for this week's episode. We'll be back again next week. Thanks very much for listening. If you have any comments or questions, then get in touch with us at politics@herald.co.uk. If you enjoyed this, please tell your friends. Please subscribe. Thanks very much. Goodbye.